access.
This meeting is being recorded.
And now let me share my screen with you all. Can you see my screen now? Okay, good. So let me just make it a little bit bigger. See if that will help you guys. Make it a bit better like that. So we have stopped here last week, right? And we'll continue from this point. I'll start from the beginning of the sentence. Is the medium will always indispensable? It increases the potency, but it is not always necessary, since a movement may occur in spite of or contrary to the medium's will. Further proof for the existence of an independent cause. It is not always even necessary for the hands to come in contact with the object in order for it to move. Almost always, all that are needed is to provide the initial impulse. But after the object has been animated, it can obey the will without a physical contact. Of course, this depends on the power of the medium or the nature of the spirit involved. We already spoken about that last week. So if you do have any query, any question, I'm more than happy to try to answer. But if not, I will move on. I guess that with that silence, I should move on. Moreover, even the first contact is not always needed. We have proof of this in the spontaneous movements and dislocations that no one even thought about causing. I want to make a comment about that here that is related to the potency. The potency in that case is the ability of medium of physic effects, right? He has a higher accumulation of ectoplasm, if you can say like that. And when he applies his will, then he increases the possibility of the object, in that case, the table, to start to move, okay? We have to remember that on the end that I also highlighted, any mediumistic phenomena is related to the medium and to the nature, of the spirits involved. That means if the medium is really doing his part, if he's following what he's being advised to do, if he is committed to the practice, that will increase his ability, or at least the way he'll be able to handle his characteristics, okay? That's why it's important the commitment of the medium to any activity that he decides to be involved with, and also the spirit involved. The spirit also needs to play a role in it. He needs to have the knowledge to be able to perform such mechanisms, okay? So let's move on to the 19. Why can't everyone produce the same effects? And why don't all the medium possess the same power? It depends on the physical composition and the greater or lesser ease in combination of the fluids. It further depends on the greater or lesser affinity between the medium and the spirits, who find in the medium the required fluidic potency. I will read until the end, and then we come back and we make comments. I think will make more sense on this one. As is the case with the magnetizers, this potency is either little or great. In this regard, we have found individuals who are completely resistant to the process. Others in which the combining of the fluids only occur because they exert their own will again. Finally, others in which it occurs so naturally and easily that they are not even aware of it, where they serve as unknown instruments, as we have just stated. See below the chapter concerning spontaneous manifestation. There is no doubt that magnetism is the principle behind this phenomena, but not as is generally supposed. We have proof of this in the exercise of powerful magnetizers who cannot even move a small table, while there are individuals, even children, who do not know how to magnetize at all, and who merely have to place their fingers upon a heavy table in order for it to shake. Thus, a mediumistic power does not depend on the magnetic power. It must have some other causes. Let's go back upstairs on the top of it. Combining fluids. This is important to any phenomena. Even when we're just giving a cacophony, is a combination of the fluids of the perispirit of the medium with the perispirit of the discarnated spirit. This approximation is what allows that phenomena to happen. The affinity with the spirit, between mediums and the spirits. This is also very important to every medium. That's why we recommend to always study, to always practice good, to always be committed to what you accept to be part of, because this is the only way we can increase our ties with the good spirits. When the good spirits start to realize that we miss a lot of commitment, we are not doing our part, we are not studying, we are not doing good to anyone, they will find better people to work with. It's simple as that. It's very simple. And I heard over the years, why this medium has this, why this medium is able to talk with this spirit, blah, blah, blah. And the answer is very clear. Some mediums are committed, some are not. Some mediums are always present, some mediums are not. Some mediums decide to change their life based in the Spiritist teachings. He understood, he sees as a beneficial for him now and in the future, and he changed. Some didn't. So on the end of the day, the spirits, the evolved spirits, they have no time to waste. They will give us one opportunity, 2, 3, but they will not be beside us forever. So if we really want to evolve and develop our mediumship, it's better that we are really committed like that. Good spirits will be around us because he will see potential on us. Otherwise, they will see potential elsewhere. Now, something else here. He mentioned here again, will. Our will is paramount sometimes, not only for the phenomena, but to prepare the ambience, to prepare ourselves, to be in accordance with the Spiritist teachings. Without will, we are just lying to ourselves. He mentioned here now about magnetism. Magnetism. Magnetism, I can say, is another doctrine, if I can. There are sister and brother of Spiritism. They work together. And even Kardec, he was a magnetist in the beginning. He knew magnetism. So it is not our scope of study here, but for mediums, it's always very positive to understand about magnetism. Because when we do healing, we are applying magnetism. That's also is also very important to know fluids, because when we do healing, we are also applying fluids. Hi, Yasmin.
Hi, I just have a question. Could you, or I'm sorry if I have forgotten. Could you define magnetism, please?
Magnetism is the fluid that every being, animal or human being or vegetal or mineral have. Is the fluid, is the energy that every being on matter, everything generates. It's like electricity. We generate electricity, and this electricity, with our will, we can make things move. Likewise, when I switch on the switch of the lamp, the light, you have the light. So to make a simple comparison, I would say that magnetism is the fluid that we all have as incarnated. Does it help, that kind of answer? Good. There's a more complex, how can I say that? There's a more detailed discrimination of magnetism, but even now I don't remember myself. I have to go back to the books to remember exactly how can I say technically what magnetism is, okay? But in the Spiritism, we do have some books giving examples and describing in details magnetism. We have an author in Brazil, I'm forgetting his name now. He is basically directing his whole work around magnetism. I have his books but back home, but I forgot his name now. I forgot.
Jacob Mello.
Yeah, Giacomello, yes. And he's really busy. I've tried to have him on board with two things, and he moves from south to north of Brazil all the time, and it's hard to get his time. He's very good. And when he's talking about here of magnetism, he made a comment about, yeah, go on, Charles.
Yes, so the question is at the beginning, combining of the fluids. So just to remember, if I remembered well, is the universal cosmic fluid that the spirit which is acting is having through his perispirit, with the animalized fluid coming from the medium, which could be also called the ectoplasm. Is correct?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
So in this case, the magnetism, the magnetizers, in the sense of the mesmerism, they are using a fluid, magnetic fluid, which is not ectoplasm.
Correct.
Or it's a different ectoplasm. One is for moving the objects, and the other one is for healing.
There is a massive question mark, because some people consider magnetism and ectoplasm the same, some people don't. And I believe the magnetism is a bit different than the ectoplasm, because the ectoplasm is generated inside our cells. And there is a theory that relates ectoplasm to the mitochondria inside the cells. And the magnetism is something a bit different. But there's no final answer. I don't think there's a final answer for that. Going back to what he was saying here about magnetizers, very powerful magnetizers were not able to do any movement of tables or anything else. So that means the magnetism itself, or only the ectoplasm, who has ectoplasm in abundance, is not sufficient to make it happen. We need to have the other half, as Charles mentioned, to be combined to them, the fluid, to make those movements. Yeah.
Yes, and here maybe we can add that the magnetizer, he can act without the help of a spirit, whilst to move a table, it doesn't work like this. It needs to have the combination of a spirit and of a medium. Otherwise, the table is not moving. So this is also one observation characterizing this difference he's mentioning here.
Very good, very good. Munir, hi Munir.
Hi, GUILHERME, Charles, everyone. I was thinking maybe we can make an analogy with crude oil, because from crude oil you can get different byproducts, and maybe from the same, type of dense fluid we can get the kind of a byproduct that is used in magnetism, and get the byproduct that we use in physical manifestation. When you know there are different types of crude oil, some are better for this than that. So perhaps when talking about these fluids or ectoplasm in general, we may get special instances of the ectoplasm. Just some idea that crossed my mind.
Yeah, no, pretty good, pretty good. What we know about ectoplasm, there are several types of ectoplasm. Visible ectoplasm, invisible ectoplasm, and different colors. That we know already, because it has been tested, it has been taking pictures and things like that. So we know those exist. But the characteristics of each one of them, then is a different thing. Then we have people with lots of theories, but we don't have confirmation of it, not yet. But what you said makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Can those called electricals be regarded as mediums? Such individuals draw from within themselves the fluid required for producing the phenomena, and they can act without the aid of the spirits. So here we are having a little bit different information, right? They are not mediums per se, in the precise meaning of the word. It might happen that a spirit will assist them to take advantage of their natural abilities. However, such individuals are like somnambulists who can act with or without spirits helping them. See chapter 14, mediums in the section, blah, blah, blah. Well, in the history, we have names that started not considered as mediums, and later on, when the clever people at that time start to evaluate them, start to call them mediums. Myself, I don't know how to make a difference. I don't know, because I will not be able to see if the spirit is there helping him or not. So it would be very difficult to me to identify what he's describing here as electricals. I understand that if we talk about healing, we have more than one type of healing. The healing only from the medium, the healing only from the spirits, and the mixed healing, i.e. part from the medium, part from the spirits. When we talk about healing in the spirit center, it's more like the mixed healing. It mixes the fluids. So I can say that a magnetizer, sorry, a magnetizer could be considered in this electrical branch. But we know that when we are trying to do something to help people with a good will, there is always a good spirit around us. So how can I identify when it's just the medium or the electrical body doing this, or is mixed? I really don't know. I won't be able to do it. Charles and Munir, do you have any idea how to do it?
No.
I don't. I really don't. The only thing that comes to my mind is if I really want to know if this is just from the body or is something else, is asking our benefactors. And eventually they would tell us, no, this person is just the person itself. He's so powerful that can do everything alone or whatever. But I never saw that, so I don't know. Can those called electricals be regarded as mediums? Oh, we just read that, sorry. When they act upon solid objects, do spirits penetrate the substance or they remain outside it? They do both. We have already stated that matter is no obstacle to a spirit who can penetrate anything. A portion of the spirits identifies itself, so to speak, with the objects it penetrates. Something came to my mind here when many years ago when I was doing a study to start a different work and speaking to our benefactors. I did ask how he was able to transport one thing from outside our room to inside our room. The best way he was able to show us, and there was the best way we could understand as well, to be honest, was that he said, when I want to move, for example, a flower, it's like I get a flower, bring inside myself, I involve the flower with my fluids. It does not necessarily mean I put the flower inside my perispirit. It's not that. I involve the flower with my fluids, and then it comes together with me inside the room. Other ways we saw in other books were far too complicated to us to understand. But when he said that, I surround the object with my fluids, and it's like I'm involving that thing and bringing it with me. That was the only way I could really make sense of it. Because we can surround anything with our fluids when we are incarnated. So the spirit can do the same, right? How does a spirit produce raps? Does it use a physical object? Nope. No. Just as they do not use their arms to lift a table, you must realize that they do not have hammers at their disposal to produce raps. Instead, the hammer is the combined fluid that they put into action using their will to move objects or produce raps. When they move objects, light transmits the movement to your sight. When they produce raps, air transmits the sound to you. So there is a part of the phenomena, right? And there is a part that we see every single day in our lives, because the way we hear, the way we see is what he described here. So the spirits, once again, they combine the fluids to be able to produce the raps. We can understand this when dealing with a hard object. But how can a spirit make us hear noises or articulated sounds within the air alone? Since it can act upon matter, it can thus act upon air in the same way as it acts upon a table. As for articulating sounds, it can imitate them just like our other noises. We have registers, we have reports of what we call materialization meetings, where even the phonetic organs of the spirits have been materialized, and through that partial materialization, they were able to talk, and everyone were able to listen to what they had to say. So there is also that possibility, okay? But this is very specific. We're talking about materialization meetings. You have stated that a spirit does not use its hand to move a table, but during certain visual manifestations, hands have appeared that played keyboards, actually moving the keys and producing sounds. In this case, isn't the movement of the keys produced by the pressure of their fingers? And isn't the pressure of their fingers direct and real when we feel them touch us and when they even leave us marks in the skin? You cannot comprehend the nature of spirits and the way they act by merely using comparisons, which provide only an incomplete idea of the matter. And here I would like to make a comment as well, is that even today, we can only comprehend partially the spiritual world. Not everyone is in agreement with everything we say. Not everyone shares the same theories in the Spiritist field. So we're still progressing. Eventually, we'll come to a point that everyone will share the same knowledge about the most common things. But even today, we are not there yet. It is always a mistake to compare the manner of acting onto yours. The spirits must always act in accordance with their organization. What is this thing here? Their organization. Their organization is the perispirit. The spirit is not able to do anything without the perispirit in this level, all right? In this level, the perispirit is the instrument that allows the spirits to interact in the spiritual world and with us. We are not talking about high evolved spirits that do not have perispirits anymore. We are talking about spirits that are more like us, that they do need to have a body, a spiritual body, to be able to interact with us.
Gil, it's Christine from Australia.
Hi, Christine.
Hi. Why doesn't Kardec then just say with their perispirit? Why does he sometimes, it sounds confusing when he's using it, it seems to be put a different way. Why not be consistent with saying with their perispirit?
What I'm going to tell you here is my perception of this subject, right? Kardec, he's spoken very little about perispirit. We have to remember that he was in the 1800s, and what he brought to us already was a shock at the time. He was a scientist, and as soon as he started to perform his work, even the scientists start to not considering him very much anymore because of what they knew at the time, because of the church at the time. So I think that he just gave us a glance of what was perispirit, but he never went so deep into perispirits. And from time to time, he used, like we see here, the organization or things like that, to describe, but not to go into depth, because I think if he went too much into depth, we would not be here today. I think we would be discredited with a lot of things. We start to talk more frequently today. If we were talking about that at his time, we would be discredited. People will think that we are totally crazy. Well, people think we are totally crazy now. Imagine it 200, 300 years ago. It would be much worse. But that's my take, Christine. I may be totally wrong. What do you think, Munir?
Yeah, I've raised my hand. I was going to say, yes, Guilherme, remember, at Kardec's time, around, let's say, the 1850, the idea of matter was totally different. It changed it completely from there onwards. And Kardec had to describe this and talk about matter in the way they used to understand those days. And even nowadays, we understand it a bit better, how it's made, you know, but we can see how it is organized. Can we see the atoms in the wall and understanding they are not solid, they are just, you know, electromagnetic interaction actually. So it's basically empty, it's a field, we could say that. And because our perception at the level that we are, we depend on sound, we depend on light to see the world around us and interact with that. So we have just the 5 senses, and it's still very limited for us to fully understand. So what Kardec's trying to say is that, you know, the organization or the structure of the perispirit is something very different from what we know in the material world. And what they knew at that time was still, you know, a very, how would I say, incomplete. You know, the idea, the picture they had was completely different. For us to understand the idea of the atom was just a ball at that time. They didn't think about electrons and protons and, you know, nuclei, and no, that idea was just something solid. It came later, after the publication of the Spiritist books. So what I see is that for Kardec, you go into depth in each of these aspects. Even the material world, they were already difficult, you know, let alone the spiritual aspects of the perispirit and the fluids and so on. So he did a good job, because now we understand that in a slightly different way. Because we understand matter in a slightly different way, we can conceive certain things. But it was very difficult to actually you know, give the full picture at that time, as it still is very difficult nowadays.
I don't remember where I read in Kardec. I think it was in the Spiritist magazine, where he mentioned that he would not disclose too much information about perispirit, because there was another person from his time already studying and preparing to maybe write a book, or I don't remember exactly. I think it was the way he was mentioned, someone is preparing a book about perispirit, but I could not find who he was referring to, because he was not specific.
Okay.
He never said like was Léon Denis, or he never mentioned, for example, a name who was the person who was doing that work, and I could never find that material either. But I think he mentioned that on the Spiritist magazine, if I'm not wrong. But as I said, I could not find that. So does it help, Christina, or does it make things more complicated what we said?
No, it helps, because putting it in the context of at the time when Kardec was exploring, because let's face it, from what I understand and what I've read and what I've seen, he didn't really believe in the beginning. He had to be convinced. And so, yeah, it's progressed. I understand. Now I understand why he wrote their organization.
Munir, did you raise your hand? Or
Yeah, I just want to add that, you know, if we pay attention, we'll see that Kardec, most of the time, he tells us what's happening, but now not how it's happening. He says an interaction of fluids, but he's saying what's going on, but he doesn't say in detail how it's happening. What is he meaning by interaction of that? Because we had no condition, I think, to go into too much depth at the time, and nowadays also.
Yeah.
Slowly we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
The same way we can teach, you know, a kid maths of a university level, you know, of a higher degree level. We have to, you know, mature and then move slowly into more complicated areas, more, you know, developed areas. So I think that's the idea. He said what was going on, but he didn't give detail of how it was happening.
Yeah.
Hi, Charles.
Yes, Munir, and even here we can see that Kardec is pushing the spirit of Saint Louis to tell how it is doing. Is it with the strength of his fingers, the muscles? And Saint Louis is answering again, as he answered previously, no, it's not like this. And he uses the expression endowing the matter or the piano or the table or whatever, or the air with artificial life. And he's telling how, but I mean, it's only the first step.
Yes.
How is it then that a spirit can, of course, he needs the help of a medium with ectoplasm, endow a material object with artificial life? That's the question. That's the question which up to now is not fully investigated, is not fully known, even in the Spiritist movement, correct?
That's very true. So let's continue a little bit and let's see if we can explore a little bit more that next sentence. Haven't we stated that the perispirit fluid penetrates matter and identifies with it? So the perispirit fluid can penetrate all the matter. So what that spirit that was José Grosso gave us the information about makes entirely sense, right? Endowing with an artificial life, that was a question, right? Well then, when a spirit plays keyboard with its fingers, it is really doing so. It is really doing so. However, it does not use muscular force to press the keys. So now we have to stop here to try to see that in a different way. The spirit is really moving his fingers, but is not doing muscular force. When he's referring to muscular force, it's to our physical muscular force. We have to understand that if our physical body is a duplication of what we have on the spiritual body, we have the equivalent of what we have here over there. But it is in a different status of the matter. So would not be able to interact with our matter. But let's give a stop here. We have two pianos here in the room now. We have our physical piano, the one we can play with, and right next to it, I'm just asking the spirits to bring one piano with the matter we have in the spiritual world. So for the spirit that is in front of the two pianos, he can play with one piano with his fingers. That is the piano that uses the matter from the spiritual world, because it's the equivalent matter to his spirit. So in this one, we could say that he's using his muscular force, the muscular force of his perispirit to play the spiritual piano. But when we try to play our physical piano from our earth, nothing will happen because his finger will go through it. He won't be able to make any movement. So to make that movement, he needs to have a combination of the fluids that he's talking about here over and over. And when he does the movement with the combination of this fluid, the will, everything we already went through it, then he's able to move the keys of the earthly piano. Does it make sense for you the way I try to present, or did I make things really way more complicated?
It was good. Thank you, Danny.
All right then. Sometimes not easy, huh? Even when I try to understand, sometimes I need to stop, read, and read again, and a couple of things I don't even know. Instead, like the table, it animates the keyboard, which obeys its will and vibrates the string. In cases such as this, something else happens that is hard for you to comprehend. So St. Louis, I was telling you, don't make too many questions, because it doesn't matter if I try to explain to you, you will not understand. And even if you ask St. Louis today, can you tell me? He will give me exactly the same answer. Who you think you are? You're still the same level where Kardec was like 200 years ago. You will not understand. So we have to go slowly, progressively slowly, trying to acquire more information, be acquainted with all we have with the science today to try to make more sense of it, but it's not easy. Oh, we still have 15 minutes. Certain spirits are still so little evolved and so material in comparison with evolved spirits that they retain the illusion of earthly life and think that they continue to act as they did when they were in the body. What he's trying to say here is the mechanism to make things happen is only one. But sometimes we do things without realizing what is behind of what we are doing. Let's use the example of the light. To me, it's just a flick of finger and I have light. But what is behind that? What is the behind of the mechanism of the switch? What is behind that when one pole touches the other pole and the current goes from positive to negative? I don't know. To me, it's just a switch. And I think that's just a switch that I'm playing with is what giving light. But on the end of the day, we know it's not. There's a bit more behind that. So that's what Kardec is trying to say here. Some spirits, sorry, the spirit's trying to say here. Some spirits, they only know the mechanism as simple as they can see. They have no knowledge to go behind that, to understand a little bit better the full mechanism, the science behind it. But some, they do. They do not perceive the true cause of the effects they produce, as a commoner does not understand the theory behind the sounds he or she pronounces. That's a very good example too. We are talking here. By the way, I'm talking too much. And I have no idea how my vocal cords produce the sounds. I have some idea because on the school we learn a little bit. But if you ask me, can you please translate exactly how that was? No, don't ask me because I do not know. So it's a very good example too. So where I am here now, pronounces. If you ask such spirits how they can play the piano, they will say that they use their fingers, since that is what they believe. That's what they see, really. They produce the effect instinctively without even knowing how. Nonetheless, they actually produce it by their will. Whenever they speak or make themselves heard, it is the same thing. It is the same thing. Now something came to my mind here is a scene on the movie Ghost. When one spirit, he was doing some physical effects in the train, right? And the main actor, I don't remember his name now, he came and was asking this spirit, can you teach me? I don't know how to do it. I just do it. I just press that thing that happened. You know, that is pretty much what happened on the spiritual world, depending on the knowledge of the spirit. Thus, we can understand that spirits can produce all the effects we ourselves can, but by means in keeping with the organization. The organization again. They possess a certain inner forces that replace our muscles, just as persons who cannot speak sign with their hands. Just as persons who cannot speak sign with their hands. Yeah. Nice example too. Among the phenomena cited as proofs for the action of the concealed power, there are those who are obviously contrary to all the known laws of nature. Hence, isn't it correct to question them? It's just so happened that humans are far from knowing about all the law of nature. Do you guys believe we know all the laws already?
No.
I think we know very little. We are in the 21st century and we know very little. And now that we have like James Webb bringing us information from beyond the space, like there are things we think we know, but this is where we are. If they knew about them, it would imply that they were highly evolved spirits. However, every day there are incidents to disprove those who think they know everything, who intend to impose limits on nature, and yet they are no less proud of themselves by the fact. Let me stop here. Oh dear. Limits to the nature. How many times in our existence we are facing situations where people with lots of diplomas, or in the right positions at least, they try to tell us what is right and what is wrong. How many times those very same people, after a period of time, they had to reconsider what they thought was right. So how can we exercise our will, trying to create limits to the nature? As we were discussing a few minutes ago, we don't know all the laws yet. So how can I decide to stop people to consider other possibilities? How can I stop people to do research, people to try to improve the current knowledge? We should not be in that position. We should be exactly against that. By constantly unveiling new mysteries, God warns people that they must distrust their own knowledge, because a day will come in which the knowledge of the most learned persons will be confounded. So here we go. Who are we to try to do that? Every day, don't you see examples of objects that are impelled by a motion that is capable of overcoming power of gravity? Doesn't a ball thrown into the air momentarily overcome this force? Pure humans who regard yourselves as being so learned and whose foolish vanity is confused at every turn, you must realize that you are still so very small. And this is for us today. We still are so very small. And when we consider ourselves as nothing or very small, as it says here, that gives us the will to learn, to do research, to read, to make questions. Otherwise, I am forced to believe in what people tell me. That's why I said in the beginning of our studies, please do not believe me. Read the books, study by yourselves, and making questions. If you do not agree with something, say so. Why you don't agree? Perhaps you will show something to all of us that none of us have perceived before. So that, I think that is what I say to my son, to my daughter. Never accept a no as an answer. A no must be explained why, and if you do see areas to develop that no to become a maybe and eventually to become a yes, is our duty to exercise. 75. The above, yeah, Charles. Charles, your mic is closed.
Sorry, just a little remark. Huh? So the spirit is acting using his perispirit fluid, using also combining it with the animalized fluid of the medium to make the wraps and to move the table and whatsoever. So we talked about just before the item 20, these electrical persons. Because one question could be, the medium has also a perispirit. So is the medium always needing a spirit to provoke some material phenomenon? And the answer is clearly no, he can provoke them by himself using his own fluids to psychokinesis, to bend some objects and this is probably what he's using when he states electrical persons. Okay, so and Saint Louis is clearly answering they can do it by their own resources without the help of a spirit. Okay, so but it must be not so easy because he needs at the same time to emit ectoplasm, and we know that when some medium is emitting ectoplasm, he is half in trance state or something like that. So it's more difficult to use the own ectoplasm and also to use the will in order to animate the object with a factice life. Just a remark.
When I was reading that, Charles, what came to my mind were those theaters where some people came doing magic things, you know, levitating, and some of them may be that case, you know, they have so much accumulate ectoplasm power in themselves that they may be able to do by themselves, you know, but it's very hard to, I don't see how to recognize them. I don't know. I really
but
don't
these
know.
are mostly, how to say it, tricks in the theater and so on. They are using tricks to make the phenomenon, like magic. But there are people who have the ability with their will to put weight on a balance or to bend some metallic objects or things like that.
Two names came to my mind were
Uri Geller, for instance, or some others.
Yeah, Mirabelli and Douglas Home.
Yeah.
Those two mediums. No, we know they were mediums, right? But Douglas Home, I'm not sure if he recognized himself as a medium, but I know that Mirabelli, he didn't, because he was not a spiritist. And they were able to do things that were definitely unbelievable. Levitating was one of them, you know.
So Saint Louis is adding, they maybe a spirit is assisting them, taking advantage of their natural dispositions. So maybe, but not always. So indeed, there are some persons who these electrical cold persons can do the type of phenomenon by their own, combining the fluid from their perispirit with the animalized fluid, their ectoplasm as well, to make the phenomenon happen without the help of a spirit.
If at that time was already difficult to know if there was a true phenomena or not, imagine nowadays where we have the science fiction helping a lot and all those tricks that technology are able to produce today. Is almost virtually impossible to identify what is true, what is not. So the only way that I think that we can identify what is true, what is not, is if we know the people that are involved in the phenomena, if they are serious people, and then we give the credit. But if it's someone we don't know where they come from or what are the moral behind, you know, it's very difficult.
Earning money, huh?
Earning money, yeah, indeed. Not easy though. Perhaps that's why we don't have many of those phenomena anymore, because today, now there's a TV show, like, you know, that's produced by this guy, this, and it'll be very easy to be misplaced today, I guess. The above explanations are clear, categorical, and unambiguous. From them, we may emphasize the crucial point that the universal fluid is the base of everything, which harbors the principle of life, is the chief agent in manifestations, and that this agent receives this impulse from the spirit, whether incarnate or discarnate. These condensed fluids comprise the perispirit or semi-material envelope of the spirit, when incarnate, the perispirit is connected to the matter of the body. In the errant state, it is free. While the spirit is incarnate, the substance of its perispirit is more or less bound, more or less adherent to it. Let me read that again. While the spirit is incarnate, the substance of its perispirit is more or less bound, more or less adherent to it. If we may put it so, in certain individuals, there is a kind of emanation of these fluids as a result of particular conditions of the physical composition, which is, properly speaking, what produces physical effects mediums. Let me highlight that here, because I will need that. In the greater or lesser abundance of emanation of this animalized fluid and the ease with which it is combined determines the medium's power. This emanation is not permanent, however, which explains the intermittency of the ability. Do you have time to elaborate on this? Let me see here. What time is it? 2 minutes. I won't be able to elaborate on this one here, but I think it's positive for us. So I will come back on this topic next week. And mediums of physical effects is something that really push our curiosity further, and is important to understand its mechanism so we can even figure out ourselves how to work with. Hi, Munir.
Just to add, it's important to read very carefully this item, because St. Louis here, he basically he answers most of the questions, the doubts we've been carrying on, and here he gives the explanation why and how some people have, and showing that it's intermittent, and also the combination of perispirit with the physical body, why some people have, why some people don't. I mean, he keeps a general idea very interesting that will help us to understand better what we've just studied.
Charles?
Yes, Munir, this paragraph is not the dialogue with St. Louis anymore. It's a comment of Kardec himself. Huh?
Yeah, it's Kardec. Yeah, it's
but he is somehow summarizing what he understood from the dialogue of St. Louis, and comparing it with the phenomenon he has witnessed.
Yeah, it's true. This is Kardec's, yes.
What I will do next week, I'll think about it if it's not too early to do, but perhaps I will show you guys a presentation that I did a couple of years ago about how our mediumship starts, the relation between our physical and our spiritual body with the mediumship. So let me think during the week, and perhaps I will not present everything, but present part of it to try to make sense of what we just saw. So next week, I will start from the 75 again, and possibly I will present few slides just to try to make more sense of how things are. All right. So that's it for today. I really appreciate you all here in our study. I'm looking forward to see you all next week again. And I would like to ask, Jacques, can you do a final prayer?
Sure.
So before you do that, let me stop sharing here. Just a minute, or I'll get lost. Tuck, 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 tuck.